Okay, got the cover popped off, haven't even taken the ring off. I just set it aside to show you what I found in this thing. First of all, this old grease, it gets a little flaky, a little hot when it gets into these cracks. This has got 970 miles on it, just the distance while Hammerhead was here. You can see it's still a nice creamy, smooth consistency. Grease hasn't broke down, it's just got a lot of belt dirt and dust and CVT debris in it. I spoke to you about this cam plate being off. One of the things, and you couldn't see it with the cover, did you see that roller weight that's fallen out? That is lodged between this plate and that plate. If you were to assemble this, put it on a machine and give it gas, this thing is locked in place, and that's the reason you either hear bad rattles, something breaks, the belt doesn't go up and down in the pulley, but all that was from is not keeping those squeezed together when I pulled it off. Like I say, I was taking it apart, I didn't care if one fell out, but that's what I found. Now, let's set this aside, and you can see where the grease gets slung to the outside and the cover stops it. I'm only running enough grease to puddle up about that much. I'm going to lay this screwdriver down here. I'm going to just pick this cam plate up. So hopefully this is all steady enough so you can see it. You see how it's pulling just a little grease out with it? This grease is basically, the cam plate stays in place, but the sheave moves. But as they move back and forth, you can see that grease that gets transferred from side to side. That's what lubricates the sliders. You don't necessarily have to pack this thing with grease from all the way out here to somewhere in here. I'm not sure that it actually hurts when the grease is new and it's creamy like this. It's when it starts to get dirty and thicken up that it retards the ability of the weights to travel back and forth. I'll just set this off to the side. You can see, hopefully, that these weights have just a little bit of grease on them. From the last time they got slung out until the next, until they got transferred back into a stop position, they are picking up grease. There's not a lot of grease in the inside of the primary up next to the center of axis. It all gets slung out. Now when I put that in there, I drop the weights in and I just take a screwdriver and kind of cover them up with grease. I don't know how fast it happens, but it's got to be quick. The first time you spin that up, it all gets slung to the outside. But you can see there's a little variety in these weights. They have a little grease on one side, they have a little grease or a little dryness on the other side. That doesn't hurt anything. That thing runs nice and quiet. In fact, in the video that I shot coasting down the other side of the Continental Divide, everything was nice and quiet, no external rattles other than that wire that broke on the heat shield on the exhaust. Everything, this is just like I like to see it when I take it apart. Now, actually, I'd like to turn this over for you. Get this one slider held in place. This is my cut cam plate. Let's walk this outside into the light. You can actually see next to the shiny spots where I took a hacksaw and I cut down a distance here. What I did then is bent those ears in, and with the grease in place it's hard to see, but I bent those in 2 millimeters. What that was at high speed, and in fact you can see in the shade how those flat spots have a dish to them. What that was for was to counteract 2 millimeters worth of shim to restore the top end speed. That's what that other cam plate's laying there with. What I'm doing is wearing it in so that I can put Sharpie on those shiny spots, see where the weights run to 20 miles an hour, and that next cam plate's going to get cut to a 4 millimeter bend. That should even add more top speed. I don't know, in theory it works. We'll find out in practice. I'm going to drop this back in here. Got the weight back in place. Here's this newer cut cam, the uncut cam plate. You can see where the wear marks are the same. It just doesn't have the cuts. And we'll take it out here in the sunlight a little bit. And you'll notice that the wear marks are flat. I don't know how it's reflecting in the sun for you guys, but I haven't bent anything on this one. I'll work on that this winter, I guess, when I have time. Okay, I guess where I'm at on this thing now is I'll go ahead and get this camera turned off, put the cover back on, got the shims installed, show you how simply I can go from a 2.8 to a 3.5 with just a couple parts. Okay, got the cover on, wiped a little of the grease off of it. I wanted to go ahead and set up on this again. Let's hope this is coming out. I wanted to show you the wear mark right here. You can see when this belt is inside the primary at the ratio that I had it at, this is as close as it ever got to the collar. Again, the idea is to get this thing to slide in and right closer and closer. And you can see that belt moving back on that primary. That's the whole trick to this game, is to get the belt off of this pulley and put it on that one. Now, earlier I installed the shim. You can see it bounce around in there a little bit. That's close enough. You really don't have to get that centered. I was telling you about the primary. I don't really worry about fingerprints and greasy hands. We'll slide this thing on there. And then you want to turn it until it engages the splines. Now, I'm going to have to turn this camera off and get this set up. One of the things that we've been talking about is the 660 holds more shim. I'll get this put on there and I'll fire this camera up just one more time and show you, but I've started to engage the splines, but they're not fully through the cam plate. It takes two hands to get everything lined up, and I'll show you here in a minute. Okay, now what I did is, and I'm going to loosen this up. See how that slides out? What that is the tension of the belt. Before I put this actually back together, I'll have to do it again. But what I had to do is I had to squeeze this belt together to get us enough room that I could actually engage all of this mess. In fact, there, I just luckily got it with one hand. But you can see those splines starting to pop through. That's what you have to keep that cam plate tight. Now, what I'll do is, from here I'll go ahead and I'll put the washer on. You can see the wear ring. I'll get it centered, get the nut on. I'm going to get everything hand tight, and then I'll start letting just a little bit of pressure off of this belt to make sure that the primary doesn't fall in while I'm tightening the nut on with an extra, with part of the foot-pounds of torque on the belt. Okay, I put the vise on there, tightened the primary nut down, got all of that pulled back off, and I wanted to show you, this is mostly for the new people that just have these minor concerns about these belts, and they don't know what is right. Also, I want to show you this belt again. What I did is loosen this bolt. This is a bolt on the 660, the 700s have them, 550s, that holds a cage on. The longer ones you can put in each of these holes. You screw them in, it splays the secondary part, and that's what puts the tension on the belt. Now I went and loosened it up to finger tight. I can take this thing out, and the belt still loose. This thing needs to spin a little bit so that the secondary spring can react, give it a clamp, and pull everything tight. The reason I went ahead and put this part in the video is you don't want to hit the key and run the motor up when everything's loose like this. This can move, weights can fall out. I actually don't know all of the bad things that could happen. That's just a couple of them. And so how I fix that is just turn everything backwards a little bit. You can actually see those brakes in the belt too. This is one of those extreme duty Daycos. It isn't worth a crap. Anyway, as you spin this a little bit, the secondary starts to clamp in, forcing the belt out higher. You can actually see with just a couple very small changes how far I can move that belt. These are all things I've been playing with the last couple of years. I'm going to go ahead, look at that spot. I'm going to show you a spot in the belt. I was pretty lucky, guys. Let's see here. Here she comes. Look at that broken belt. God almighty. Hauling ass in the mountains on the last day, and that's how much belt I had left. Well, you take luck over skill any day. Let me get this belt changed out, and I can't, that's probably the reason my ratio got longer. I was also in the beginning of the video telling you I thought I started with a 2A2, and it was getting closer to around a 3. That's probably providing the extra length to the belt to get the ratio up. Anyway, let me get this belt changed out and I'll fire the camera back at you.